Welcome back to night 3 of my Facebook Lives. And tonight I'm talking about internal versus external triggers. And this is a really interesting topic and really one that comes to light in relationships. My name is Dolores Andrew, and I'm an assertive and empowerment coach. And I'm taking you through 5 nights of Facebook Lives and all things confidence. So tonight's conversation is actually one that is very interesting, as they all are, of course. Last night I spoke about the importance of becoming emotionally fit in order to build resilience. And of course, when we know, as I spoke about last night, when we're emotionally fit, we're able to lean into our emotions and we're able to use our emotions then as a tool for empowerment rather than having them control us. And we are able to become resilient and bounce back from situations when we are able to embrace our emotions. And this leads us up nicely to the topic that I'm speaking about this evening, which is in relation to looking at external triggers and internal triggers and looking at the difference between the two of them. And, it's how we have our needs met is the topic around this. And relationships, of course, can be our biggest teachers in our lives and can throw up so much for us, and they can provide us with our biggest tests. And it's through our relationships that we can realize that we're looking at somebody else to fix us or to give us what we think it is we want in order for us to get what we want in our life. And now this mainly happens at an unconscious level, meaning that we're not even aware actually that this is actually panning out for us. And take, for an example, a scenario I had with a client of mine whose relationship was fine mostly until they had children. And after they had children, after they had their first child, their relationship started to deteriorate. And, to such an extent that they barely recognized what they had before it. It was a really such a drastic change. Now, it didn't happen immediately after the baby was born, but it started to creep in, and those little things, I suppose, that we would notice happening started to happen. So the lady came to me quite distressed actually about the situation that was happening in her relationship. And she felt that it was definitely started around the birth of their child, their baby daughter. And she actually thought that her husband was actually displaying symptoms of being almost jealous of the child. Now, she also thought that this sounded almost silly to her. Why would her husband be jealous of the child that they had wanted so much and had planned? So, you know, it took her a while to pick up the courage to broach this subject with her husband. And when she did, he had realized that their relationship was going through a rift as well. But luckily enough for them, he was willing and able to look at the relationship dynamic and to discover why it was now had taken a bad turn, let's say. But also he was willing to look at his story around why the relationship had broken up. And from the work he did and from speaking to myself about it, he realized that it was actually triggering an old story that he held, and one that was formed when he was really young. And it was the time that he was an only child, and then suddenly he wasn't. He had a little sister. And he felt like he was abandoned by his mother when his little sister was born. Now, of course, he wasn't abandoned, but it was his perception as a young boy, because he loved his mother dearly. And he obviously, children rely on their parents and their caregivers for so much, that he felt that he was neglected when the little sister came along. Now, as I mentioned, it's a perception, and there was never any abuse in his family home, but he perceived that when this little girl came along, mom left me. Interestingly enough, when himself and his wife, they had their baby, it was a little girl they had. And unknowing to him, he felt this story of abandonment. It was triggered again. So this is what happens when we hold stories so tight, and he hadn't dealt with the story, obviously, of abandonment around his mother when he was young. He probably didn't even tell anyone. He withdrew. He withdrew at the time with his mother. He thought he had done something wrong because she was giving all the love to the new baby. And this is exactly what he did again when he had his own daughter. He withdrew from his wife. So this is a perfect example of externally looking to someone for something in a relationship. So he was looking at his wife to fill his need for, love unconditionally, which of course is what we want our love to be, unconditional. But also when dynamics change, when a child comes along, relationships can be certainly tested. But when someone holds a backstory as strong as he had around abandonment, that's a huge story to get triggered. And the emotions he felt came up again, the same emotions, because he had buried the story and hadn't dealt with it. So luckily for them, as I say, they were able to realize how their relationship dynamic changed. And also they were willing to look at the story around it and to actually, a good result. They healed the story. And he no longer has this abandonment story. He realizes that he was being fueled, his story was being fueled by something that happened so long ago to him. And that it resurrected again. He had no idea that he barely remembered even the fact that his little sister came along. We don't, the stories that are formed when we're so young, even though they're so strong for us and can get triggered, we don't always remember their exact details. But doing this kind of work like this, when situations happen, when dynamics, as I say, relationships, this kind of thing comes up for us, it's huge then, because our backstories will trigger if we hold issues around belonging, which was his one. He felt he no longer belonged to his mother in the same way he had before his little sister came along. So I just really, as I say, I wanted to share that story because it's a perfect example of how external triggers, we look to them for giving us what we want. Now, obviously in a relationship, we look to the other person for love unconditionally, but unless we do the inner work as well and rid ourselves of stories, limiting beliefs that are holding us back, they will be still there propelling us and actually having us play out similar stories to ones we formed when we were so young. Interesting to note this. So there again, this is all about storytelling and becoming so clear on the stories that fuel us. So the moral of the story is, if you find yourself, getting triggered by something, you don't know why, all of a sudden, you just feel differently about something, or if maybe it could even be a work situation, um, you know, there's something there. Look at the story you're telling yourself. Really dissect it. Look at the emotions, like we talked about last night, about being emotionally fit. What emotion is coming up for you? Because each emotion that we feel has a message for us, because emotions are messenger molecules. Fear tells us, obviously, fear is instinctual. I mentioned it last night. We talked about trust last night, but fear as well, and an issue around abandonment, like I talked about tonight. So looking at our stories and looking at the emotions to find out where they have their root in. It's one of the best ways that we can change our story and actually have the confidence to change our story, because this was done in such a lovely way, obviously, with his wife, that it didn't feel as though she was loving. They both wanted the outcome. They both wanted their marriage to work and their relationship to work. They had, longed for this daughter. They had her. And we can heal our stories. And I think this is a great way to realize this. So I go much deeper into storytelling in my 4-week Master Your Confidence course that's coming up on the 4th of October. It's 4 weeks of delving into our stories and realizing what actually is keeping us stuck where we are. We find out what our limiting beliefs are. I'll just share it with you here. We delve in, we create a map week one, we find out where we are. We look at our value systems, and there again, value systems are huge, as I mention all the time, because we can be sometimes coming from someone else's value system, could be societal even, but it's when we're not in alignment with our own values. It's like the story I just mentioned. We won't be getting life on our terms. And we also look at that, we define our motivators week one. Week two, we build on that and we talk about belonging versus fitting in. There again, this fitting into to a situation, we change a bit of ourselves when we fit in. You know, when we belong, we're just authentically who we are, and we're confident enough to be ourselves. We also go deep into our excuses and our limiting beliefs, and of course, the inner saboteur. When we delve into the main emotions like fear and anger and sadness and even jealousy, and I let you know how to work with these emotions in order to get from them what you need to learn in order to move out of a situation. Then week three, we go on to how we deal with our power. And what we want to be is we want to be assertive. We want to say yes when yes is the right answer, and we want to be able to say no when no serves us better. I'll also talk about the interesting topic of wanting something and desiring something and the different energies of those. And I'll teach you tools like creating boundaries, grounding, anchoring, which is an LLP tools, lots of tools to help you to keep on track. And week four, we take stock of where we are. We learn how to define our strengths so that we can go forward, creating our vision from our strengths and having rooted out all the limiting beliefs that were keeping us stuck. Now, there's two days left to get the early bird bundle, which is I put together a package that's worth €935, and you pay until Thursday. It's just €399 for all of this. So the first thing that includes is the full 4-week Master Your Confidence online course, which I'm running through a Facebook group. It'll be lessons like this. It'll be masterclasses on each of those subjects I mentioned, running for 4 weeks. There'll be exercises, and it's all run through a Facebook group. You'll have exercises to do with each week building on the other. So that's included. And I've also thrown in my 7-part video series, The Subtle Art of Storytelling, because that's another course where I really went deep on storytelling and really understanding the dynamics of the stories that we tell, how they formed. I show you this point of power, which I created, which is when you realize that you always have a choice. So I take you through the point of power, and I also show you how to create better stories. The last 2 videos in this series are for people that are in business and they want to take the stories that you've come up with after doing the first few exercises, and then you can learn how to use this story to find your ideal client and to create content for them. Because when we're selling what we do, we're speaking our client's language. We're talking to our clients' pain points. So you can be not salesy, and if you have a service that people need, then it's about creating content with your ideal client in mind. Also included in the bundle is a masterclass on mastering your confidence. And lastly is a one-to-one coaching session with me. So as I say, all of this is included for $399. This early bird bundle I put together is available for the next 2 days actually 3 days until the 25th of September. So until Thursday, you can get all of this for just $399. So thanks for coming along this evening. We do have more 2 more nights of lives like this where I go delving deeper into topics like this and showing you how important it is to step into our confidence, to have the confidence like the man did I told you in the story about earlier, to actually look at his stories and to realize that we can change them. Because when we change the stories of our lives, we start creating the life what we want, because we're living on purpose. It's all very well to be, having affirmations, and they're wonderful, not knocking them at all. But when we start living on purpose and living from a place that we want, our own values, living from our core beliefs and values, life just is easier. So thanks for being here again tonight. And until tomorrow, have a good evening.